So I wanted to be able to get the engine running again. In order to do that, I need to hook up the cooling system. And in order to do that, I need to fill that cavity there with a new heater core. So this whole assembly previously mounted right there, and it's held in place by some screws along this flange against the side wall. All right, and you also see, put some light, you also see the core for the air conditioner, which I guess is, it's not the condenser, it's the evaporator. So it's where the compressed Freon is expanded and it cools. And with that cold, the air passes through it. But you have a door that will close and block the air off. Let's see if I can get to it here. So that, when it is closed, prevents the air from going across. I'm sorry. So when it's this way, the air can only go past the heater core, and it runs through a door here. I don't really understand. I mean, I could try to explain it, but there are probably better videos on how the duct system works. Nonetheless, in my car, I've checked to make sure that all doors move. All of these do something as you move them. This cable up on top here, the other end of which goes to one of the heater control knobs. As that rotates, that door there opens and closes, and I guess I see more vacuuming than I need to do. Alright, so with that in mind, that's a permanent part. The heater core sits in this space. Everything gets screwed back up. I guess I didn't point out that these screws here, that one there, and there all hold this assembly up against the firewall. When these two are protruding from the firewall through there, those holes up there, that will give me the connections to make for the radiator hoses that go to the back of the engine and to the water pump to complete that whole circuit. So let's put it back in place. So it's in place, not without plenty of effort. There's a screw down there that holds one corner. There's a screw right there. There we have the inlet and outlet for the heater core. There are screws under here. So that holds that whole thing in place, and it's in. So onward. And we're back to something completely different now that we're actually back to something. So I don't think that is a ding, but I'll have to check it. So I've put filler, a couple different applications of filler on this fender, and we'll let it harden up. No, that's not a ding, fortunately. And then we'll turn our attention to putting the front of the car back together. Specifically referring back to my GTO restoration guide. We're dealing with some of these things here. The hood latch, this structural piece here. I don't recognize that, but I'm sure it's on a shelf somewhere. We're going to dig it out. The hood latch here needs a spring. So we've cleaned it and painted it. A spring goes between there and there, and as you can see, it's missing a loop. So we're going to order another one from Ames tomorrow morning. And as I put in before, the last time I was out here, the heater core is in some light. Okay, the heater core is in, but I don't like the way it fits loosely. And I've done some research, and strangely enough, I cannot come up with the pad that fits between the heater core and the firewall for a 65 with air conditioning. We'll look a little harder. Maybe just not looking the right. Well, it's not been without its challenges and its slowdowns and starts and stops, but we've got the radiator installed, the shrouds installed, the fan is installed. You can see it through there. Transmission coolant lines are reconnected and tightened. We've got the lower radiator hose cut to length and installed. We've discovered that the upper radiator hose that, according to the world, is supposed to fit is just not happening. It's just not gonna work. Tried it at different angles. It just ends up. This is, let's see. Sorry, I don't know where it ended up, but what came off was a line like this, where it was just infinitely flexible, and that's appears to be what I'm gonna have to go back with. Now I'm on to my next. When I got this car, the heater core leaked back in when I got it in the 80s, and so here at the back of the head, I installed a cap. And I also installed a cap on the outlet of the water pump. Well, now that I have the heater core installed, I can run the hoses, but I just don't see how that's done, and it doesn't match what's in the book. The book talks about a right angle connector on the front of the head to route to the lower, but instead I get to come off of that and hang a U and back and around again and get to that tap right there. Now the upper one I can deal with. It goes up, it ends up going into that guy there, but this one gonna be interesting. I'm gonna go do a little more research and find out what the deal is. So that's what is our next project place. Anyway, let's see how much of this we can get back together. Okay, all I had to do was turn the page. So this makes sense. Comes around here, and this, by the way, is the heater hose for a 65 GTO with air conditioning. So we just have the single hose that routes all the way back, the 3/4 hose, and this 5/8 hose is going to have to do some sharp turns. We'll see how that works. See if there's a special hose for that, or what I need to do. Maybe I put in a elbow and not bend the hose. Maybe that's the way to do it. Alright, well, at least it exists. It was designed to go that way, because when you have the air conditioner compressor, as this car came with, I guess they figure that you can't route from up here and get around where you need to go, so they put it back there and did some fancy hose. So we'll see what we can do about that. So a rainy night out in the garage, and I've sanded down the filler that I put on the last time I was out here. Was that Monday night? Then I've found another spot, a couple spots, ones that didn't have enough. So now we're going to move on and continue to reassemble underneath the hood. Got radiator hose, spark plugs, etc. And we'll see where that takes us. Alright, the distributor is in. We had to bend this vacuum line that goes to the power brake booster. We had to bend this vacuum line that goes to the transmission. But other than that, we were able to get it in. Now you can see right through there, that is the fitting for the 5/8 diameter hose, which has to plug into there. And now you can see peeking through the 3/4 inch hose fitting from the heater core. So the heater core is back in with those foam gaskets to seal it, and that was not without its challenges. I found, and I'll include that picture on the internet, of how the HEI, or high energy ignition distributor, should get installed. And according to what I've seen, this is parallel to the firewall, and this terminal here is the #1 cylinder. So right now the engine is turned so that the timing mark is at top dead center. The installation of this with, I don't think the cap is, I think I've tightened it all down. But anyway, when I rotated this in, the rotor was not pointing at the #1 while the oil pump was engaged down at the bottom of the distributor shaft. So I pulled it back out, I turned the I turned the oil pump shaft slightly, and then dropped the distributor back into place. So now the rotor is pointing approximately at this #1 terminal. And we've got quite a bit of adjustment here, so I shouldn't have to remove the distributor again at some point. So on the opposite side, coming back on here, is the hold down. So I'll snug that down while still allowing the distributor to rotate some. So once I get that done, I'll move on to these last hoses. Here's the replacement hose, and I now have cable clamps to put those in. So we'll get on to that and then figure out what's next to get this thing running again. All right, because the coil for an HEI ignition system is in the cap, right in there, I don't need this coil anymore. So it will come out. And there's one bolt that holds the bracket for this that screws into the head. It's kind of sticking out there. Anyway, there's another thing. This is a ground strap that comes off of the bracket for the coil, and it screws into the firewall with this sheet metal screw. And I'm not sure if this is the only path that grounds the engine to the car body or not. I don't really want to put the bracket back on without the coil, but I definitely want the coil out of the way. So I'll do a little research and figure out if I need to put a ground strap somewhere else. But for the time being, that coil and bracket and such are coming out. So for the return line, I put that elbow as close as I could to the fitting, and then I routed it to the heater core. I'm not real thrilled. There's a couple of parts that are almost trying to pinch, but not. All right, and then I ran the 3/4 from the water pump, and I did not put an elbow in. It seems to want to route just fine, and I suppose, I tried longer on that 5/8, and it just seemed to want to pinch even more. But I've got clearance to the distributor cap, and I still need to hook up the power and ground to the distributor HEI system. I'll do that pretty soon when I'm dealing with all the wiring here. The upper radiator hose is now installed. If you're interested, that's the part number FlexForm FF254 that works with my setup, and it just happened to be that I have a larger tube at the radiator than I do at the thermostat housing. So all these are hooked up. So the cooling system now closed off, and we move on, like I said, to the electrical, getting the wires back run again, powering the HEI and starter, and should be able to fill it up with antifreeze, and put a fan belt on it, and it'll be good to go.